Hello everybody! Hope you're doing well, and today I'm going to be recapping and giving my thoughts on episode 9 of The King, Eternal Monarch. But first, there's something I do want to say. I want to say thank you to those who have been leaving comments on my recent recap videos. I know it doesn't look like a lot of comments, but from 0 to actual comments, where you guys are sharing your theories, giving me feedback, just overall, they have been great vibes. And some of you have left some really detailed comments about the show and your theories, and it's blown me away. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading them. Keep them coming, and thank you so much. It was suggested that I shorten the universe names to ROK and KOC, so Republic of Korea, Kingdom of Korea, since it seemed like y'all were getting, or one of you was getting a little confused, or it seemed like I was getting confused. So we're gonna try that out in this video. So without further ado, let's get into this episode, which I have to say, some of y'all's theories in the comments were spot on, and it pretty much happens exactly how some of y'all predicted. So mind blown. Let's get into the episode. Just to recap on how episode 8 ended, we left off with Detective Kong breaking into the king's hotel room, and he was in the middle of fighting who he thinks is Unsup and realizes it's Jung, but he doesn't fully understand that yet. He then recognizes Egon, asks him if he's the kid from the TV, and lo and behold, we find out that Kong is a doppelganger from KOC. Now, we don't exactly start back in the spot where it was left off in episode 8, but we do get there after a few scenes at the beginning. So I'll talk about what happens in the hotel room a little later in this recap. But the first thing that we start this episode off with is the king and detective at the location where his mother's doppelganger is supposed to be living, which turns out to be a big field. Yeah, because obviously someone doesn't want her found, or she doesn't want to be found. To the detective, it's made her more determined to get to the bottom of this and find her. The king doesn't seem all that upset that he won't be meeting his doppelganger mother, and the detective asks why, and he says it's because it's not his real mother, it's just somebody that looks like her. I'm obviously not saying what he says word for word, but that's the gist of what he said. While they're talking, the detective mentions that she can't really relate to what his life must be like, because he makes a joke about people committing treason around him, and she's of course totally offended at him and for him, and just can't understand what that must be like and how he can joke about that kind of stuff. Considering his dark past and what he's going through right now, she doesn't understand. And girl, I've been wondering the same exact thing. She also asked the king how exactly he's able to cross between the universes. Like, how did she and him get to KOC? How did Jung and him get over to Korea? Like, obviously she understands there's an in-between, but how exactly is he doing it? And he, of course, won't tell her. I'm guessing because he wants to keep her safe, and her knowing how the flute works puts her in danger and at risk and more in Yim's sights than she already is. I kind of feel like the detective's gonna come to it on her own though. I mean, he kind of hinted when they first went to the bamboo forest together the first time, like so many episodes ago, that it might not be there because something of his was missing or he didn't have. So she's a detective. I'm sure if he doesn't tell her, she'll figure it out, or someone else will tell her at this rate. So in this episode, the king has come up with the brilliant plan that since Jung is needing to stay in ROK, that he's gonna take his doppelganger Unsup with him to KOC and have him impersonate Jung, so none will be the wiser. So they're switching places, and honestly, through the episode, they're both doing very bad jobs at impersonating one another, but it created a lot of hilarious moments, and it had me howling with laughter throughout the episode. From Unsup having to cut his precious hair to Jung getting a driver's license and ROK because Unsup just couldn't pass it, to later on in the episode when Unsup is in KOC and is trying to act like Jung. It's just, I mean, Unsup's character is just hilarious at any given time. The actor does such a great job playing these two characters. I really believe they aren't the same person, even though it's obviously the same actor playing the completely, I don't know. He does a great job. He does a great job. That's all I'm gonna say. So while the king is still in ROK, early in the episode, we have a scene of the Prime Minister and her mother over at the Prime Minister's place. And this is when her mom tells her about the strange customer who came to get their umbrella and how they looked just like the late Yi-Yim, and was curious if maybe Yi-Yim had a kid or something out there and it could be him. The Prime Minister confirms he did not have any children before he died, and don't tell anybody that you think that Yi-Yim is alive. Like, that's crazy. The mother is like, yeah, no doubt, I'm not gonna tell anybody. Why would I tell anybody? But even though the Prime Minister has her stone face on, after she leaves her mom at her place, she looks back at the newspaper, and I'm wondering if she might be connecting the newspaper with Yi-Yim now? I don't know, but suspicious stuff happening there. Maybe she's seeing a connection. Who knows? After this, we're taken back to the scene that we left off at in episode 8, where Kong is confronting the king in the hotel room that he broke into to investigate who this guy was. And with the king's help, Kong kind of figures out where he's originally from and that he did see the king on television and that he is Egon. The king confirms this and speculates out loud that Kong might have been taken from the KOC when he was young and replaced his doppelganger in ROK for some weird reason. We aren't sure, but he does suspect it's connected to his uncle. I mean, how could it not be? Though it does seem like the king doesn't suspect Kong like he was in on it. It seems more like the king sees him as a victim of Yi-Yim, since he obviously replaced his doppelganger as a child. After this interaction, Kong leaves and goes to confront Detective TAE-EUL about seeing Unsup at the hotel, but how it wasn't Unsup, and confirming that she knows what he meant by that. That doppelgangers exist and that there's another universe. The detective tries to explain to him what she knows, but he's not having it and walks away and spends the rest of the episode pretty much avoiding her. I'm not sure if he's doing this because he feels betrayed by her or if it's because he's needing to sort through what exactly is going on and who he is, since he just discovered he's from a different universe and it happened when he was a kid. We see his mother basically abandoning him on the streets in KOC, and then Yi-Yim showing up and saying he'll help him find his mother. Then suddenly he's waking up and seeing his mother crying over him. I'm a little worried that Kong actually may be in on it, since we had that scene of him looking at the family photos and trying to smile like he was in the pictures. But I'm also wondering if maybe Yi-Yim did something to him that gave him amnesia, or he thinks he has amnesia, and he and his family just thought that's what he was suffering from and why he doesn't have memories of his childhood before he woke up from the coma. They haven't mentioned his coma. This is all speculation at this point, but that's what I'm going on theory-wise right now. We also have two time-stopping moments in this episode. The first one is when Uncle Yi-Yim is passing through the obelisk to ROK, and at this time he's informed about Detective TAE-EUL visiting the hospital, as well as Kong, and what's going on with him, and the fact that the restaurant owner is missing. That's the guy that the king and Jung intercepted in the last episode. He's given all the deets the minute he's in the car. When his henchman or minion or whatever you want to call him asks him what he wants to do about these different situations, the detective, Kong, the restaurant owner, you know, should we take the detective and Kong out of the picture, that kind of thing, Yi-Yim gets real pissed and throws him against a flaming barrel of wood and tells him just focus on finding the restaurant owner. Yi-Im tries to reach the restaurant owner with the burner phone, and guess who picks up on the other line? Remember, the reason he's missing is because Jung and the king got to him and have his burner phone, and this was the whole plan. Was the king was waiting for Yi-Im or someone on Yi-Im's camp to call. So honestly, the scene gave me chills, okay? I was freaking out. This was like, it's coming. This is the moment. Ah! So now the king knows for sure where his uncle is and lets Jung know, as well as the detective, and heads back to the Korea universe with Unsup, because now that he knows what universe Yi-Im is in, next time time stops, he'll know that Yi-Im is in KOC. Smart thinking. He's a smart cookie. While this is happening in ROK, we get a glimpse into what the Prime Minister is up to in KOC. We learn a little more about her and find out from her advisor, who actually leaked those photos of the government official a few episodes ago. Remember that? When she met up with the prince in the coffee shop? Apparently it was her husband or ex-husband. The subtitles were a little confusing on this, so if I misunderstood that, I apologize. But he apparently is the one who found the photos and distributed them, and he's apparently in prison for embezzlement, for just a bunch of things. So obviously he has to be an ex, because how could you be a prime minister with a husband who's in jail? I wouldn't think that she's still married to him. I guess even though he's in jail, he's still very well connected. So she goes to visit him because he requests it. And I think she also wants to know why he had the photos or why he did that with the photos. But while she's there, she also asks him to look into the newspapers since he's got them connections. And I guess she sort of makes a deal like, hey, you do me a favor, I'll think about helping help you get out of jail quicker. Back in ROK, before the king leaves, he meets up with the detective and they have a cute little date, which was super sweet. And this is also when the king tells the detective that Yi-Im is in ROK. And of course she gets upset and worried for herself and the king. The king consoles her and lets her know his plan, that Jung will be staying in ROK to locate him and he'll be taking Unsup with him. So there are no questions about what happened to Jung in the KOC universe. This is also when the detective gives Yigon a copy of the murder case that they were investigating in the first few episodes, since it seems it's connected to his universe based on the fact that they found his burner phone. As the king looks at the image of the victim, he knows immediately who it is. And I was like, oh yeah, that was him. It's one of the people that helps take care of his horse and works inside the palace, which later in the episode he goes to confront and puts him on house arrest and tells everyone to keep him out of the palace, because it seems he could be the ROK doppelganger. So after the date, the king and Unsup go through the obelisk to KOC, and not sure why, but Unsup took the balloon from the in-between with him to the other side. That felt like a very Unsup thing to do, and him pretending to be young, holding the balloon, was just too cute to me. They didn't just bring the balloon over though, they also brought the restaurant owner to be judged accordingly for the treason that he committed against the king and the former king, since, you know, he helped in that. He was one of the guards. This is when the king tells the guards to watch the bamboo forest day and night and to report any suspicious activity. And he also asks for any and all camera footage from the last year from that area, because he's definitely now gonna see if he can find Yi-Im and what he looks like. And speaking of security footage, it seems that the king took Jung's laptop with him back to KOC and didn't think to ask for Jung's password. The king tries a few times and fails, saying it's because palace security is very strong. However, with the promise of a fancy LED face lamp mask thing, Unsup is able to figure out the password in one try, which pretty much was Jung's name and some numbers that apparently I don't know, like, it was very funny, but I don't fully get the joke. Now, why did the king want access to the laptop, you ask? Well, remember how when the detective was on his side of the universe and they were hiding the fact that she existed by deleting all camera footage of her in the palace? Well, apparently Jung had copies of the security footage from her stay and also from where she had gone when she went on her little field trip. So the king is missing her and wanted to see her, and he thought watching the footage of what she saw around his kingdom sounded like a good idea. A little stalkerish, but I'm fine with it. Now things get real creepy as he's watching this security footage though. While he's looking at it, she walks past a bookstore and in front of it is the Yo-Yo Kid. That same Yo-Yo Kid. Now, I honestly thought what was gonna happen here was the Yo-Yo Kid was gonna recognize the detective and try and be like, Luna, Luna. But no, the Yo-Yo Kid doesn't even react to her, first and foremost. That's the thing that I noticed. And then stuff got really weird. I'm not too sure what it means, but it was real creepy. First, the kid looks straight into the camera footage, and then we hear lightning. The king clutches his arm as if his shoulder's hurting, and then he looks at the footage again and, you know, replays it to see what was up with that kid. And this time the kid's not looking at the camera. He's just yo-yoing away. Yo-yoing! This is when, upon closer inspection, the king realizes that the footage he's looking at has the year 2022 in its date stamp. So he's literally looking at footage of the future. So this is definitely the bookstore that Yi-Yim has been visiting. So what, is it like in a time vortex? What is going on here? The other big tell for him is the detective is also not wearing the same outfit that she was the entire time that she was on her little field trip. So that was another sign that it wasn't the same day. So where did that footage come from? And why didn't anybody else notice that? Jung was going through security footage to get a photo of her. How was this missed? Right after that, we then see a shot of Jung at the bookstore looking for a medical book. Is he really looking for it though? Suspicious. I don't think he's working with Yi-Yim since the bookstore owner was really trying to get him to leave, like, oh, we're closed. And it also seemed like the bookstore owner didn't want to get recognized because obviously if anyone's gonna know, the prince is gonna know that he was one of Yi-Yim's men. I don't know. But there is also a very sweet scene of the prince and the king together doing this New Year's tradition that they always do where they meet up by the ocean to, I think, bring in the new year. So we see that, and I feel like the prince is not part of Yi-Yim's camp. So he might just be investigating on his own and may know more, like he knew more about the autopsy report. Later on in the episode, we see the prime minister come to the king's palace where they spend all night going through the government's budget. Love a good budget. It's the new year, and apparently what they do at the end of the year is they go through the budget from the former year and plan next year's budget. So that's what the prime minister and the king did. Nothing to do with what's happening behind me, that's okay. This also made me so anxious because Unsup is barely convincing anyone that he's young, and the prime minister looks to be a little suspicious of him. You know, she's just like, something's off about him. I mean, it's so obvious to me. The poor guy is falling asleep on his feet as the king and the prime minister work through the night to go through the budgets and everything. And also he like pulls out some stuff from Korea, and the king has to kind of like hide the label in hopes that she doesn't notice, because I don't know exactly what the insignia said, but I'm pretty sure it said something like made in Korea or something, like just a dead giveaway that it is not from that universe. And in the ROK universe, Nari makes a comment to the detective asking if she thinks something is different about Unsup besides his new haircut, which Nari doesn't like. She thinks it makes him look less attractive, and the detective is like, you've got some weird taste. So later on in the episode, after we see the prince at the bookstore, we see the king looking through more CCTV footage, looking for Yi-Yim, and then him having a flashback to a previous conversation he had with the detective, where pretty much She gives him the answer without even realizing it. She's asking the king about the seeds that she took from KOC and if the ones she planted in the in-between had grown yet. And he's like, nah girl, because time stops there, so nothing grows there. And she kind of says under her breath, well, does that mean you don't age in there then? So after this, you know, he's been looking for Yi Yim in the CCTV footage. He's been looking for an old man, I'm assuming. So once he decides, should I be looking for what Yi Yim looked like when I remember him, when I was a boy? And he immediately finds him. This is also when time stops again. So now the king knows that his uncle is back in KOC and meets him where the opening is from the obelisk, which is in the middle of a city. So we have a standoff in the middle of the street between the king and Yi Yim, surrounded by people taking pictures of the king because he's out in public on his majestic white horse, and that's how we end the episode. This episode was phenomenal. I have no complaints. Oh my gosh, there were so many moments. I mean, just the whole King Yi Yim standoff, it was coming to a head. Oh, my hair, the hairs on my arms were just sticking up. I was like, it's finally here. It's finally happening. Super great episode, super great. I am freaking out. I want to know what's going to happen next. I don't know what else to say about this episode. I am a little sad that there were no Luna scenes at all in this episode, but you know, I mean, she was teased in the trailer for episode 10 that's coming out tomorrow, so maybe we'll have more of that happening next episode. But in regards to episode 9, I loved it. Twists and turns, discoveries made, everything about it. Oh, I feel so bad for Kong. I do. I hope everything's okay with him. So yeah, very excited for the next episode. And that's my recap and my thoughts of this episode. I feel like it was a little mixed up there. Sorry about that if anything was confusing, but leave a comment below and help me out. Tell me what I missed. But until next time, thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye. Recording that. And replaces Detective TAE-EUL and goes to confront. We also, oh, am I in the spot? Oh, I'm sweating, I'm sweating, I'm sweating. Oh, I got a side-splitting pain from that one, from that realization. Oh, that hurts. I'm also dehydrated. Boom.